For the last few months, I have been gone. No devlogs, no tutorials, no game updates, just silence. And if I'm being honest, I didn't despair because I was burnt out. I disappeared because I was searching for an idea worth spending years of my life on. Something that felt bigger than another prototype, something worth finishing. Over the last few months, I have spent a lot of time traveling, observing architecture, reading mythologies, studying history, and replaying some of the games that inspired me to become a developer in the first place. And somewhere along the way, I found Project Kiln. One of the hardest things about game development isn't programming, it isn't art, it isn't animation, it's finishing it. Like many developers, I have started more projects than I have completed. And honestly, every idea sounded amazing. The concept felt exciting. But eventually, the scope just grew. The vision becomes impossible, and the project dies. Over time, I have realized something. The problem wasn't that my ideas were bad. The problem was that I was building games before I understood why they existed. So I stepped away. Not from development, but from rushing into the next thing. I wanted to understand what kind of experience I actually wanted to create, what kind of world I wanted players to remember. And that journey, eventually became Project Ken. There were a few things that kept appearing over and over again during that search: the Gothic architecture, the Gothic literature, ancient ruins, forgotten kingdoms, stories about gods, humanity, and mortality. I became fascinated with places designed to make people feel small. Massive cathedrals, towering structures, from Count Dracula's castle to Babylon's hanging gardens. Buildings that survived hundreds of years. At the same time, I found myself returning to games like Dark Souls and Elden Ring, not because of their combat, but because of their atmosphere. The feeling that every stone has a story, every ruin has a history, and every victory comes at a cost. What fascinated me most wasn't what those games explained, it was what they didn't explain. That mystery became a huge inspiration for what Project Kiln would eventually become. Project Kiln is a dark fantasy action game set in a world trapped beneath eternal darkness. Long before humanity existed, immortal beings ruled the world. Perfect, unchanging, deathless. Kinda reminds me of dragons from Dark Souls. Their king was known only as Kiln, but one immortal was born different. Unable to wield the power of the others, that outcast would eventually create humanity, a fragile race capable of growth, change, and adaptation. What followed was a war spanning centuries, a war between immortal perfection and mortal ambition. Players take the role of one of the 12 divine paladins, warriors blessed with fragments of divine light, the first beings capable of killing immortals. The vertical slice I am building focuses on the beginning of that journey, a doomed mission, a fallen city, and the death of one of the rulers of the immortal world. While the world and story are important, gameplay comes first. Right now, I have completed the foundation of player character, movement, locomotion, combo systems, combat stances, blocking, parrying, and the core attribute framework. The combat is designed around aggressive melee encounters. Players can switch between one handed and two handed combat styles. The one handed stance focuses on adaptability, the two handed stance sacrifices speed for devastating impact and crowd control. One of the key mechanics I'm currently developing is a parry system. It will eventually allow players to reflect projectiles and break the defenses of powerful enemies. The goal is to create combat that sits somewhere between a Souls like and a fast paced action game, demanding, responsive, and well, satisfying. My current focus is enemy development. The first enemy player encounters are creatures known as the Eyeless, failed experiments born during humanity's war against the immortals. They roam the ruins of abandoned keeps and they consume whatever remains of the dead. These enemies will serve as players' first introduction to the combat system while helping me establish the darker side of the world's lore. At the same time, I am beginning work on the level itself. I have conceptualized a ruined settlement, a graveyard road, a cathedral's courtyard, and finally, a confrontation inside a Gothic sanctuary. One thing I want to do differently with this project is share the process. Every week, I will be releasing tutorials covering systems that are actively being built for Project Kiln, combat systems, AI, animation blueprints, gameplay architecture, boss design, and everything else that goes into building a game like this. Rather than creating disconnected tutorials, you will be able to follow the actual development of Project Kiln while learning how each system works behind the scenes. Hopefully, that helps other developers avoid some of the mistakes I have made along the way. Let's be real, Project Kiln is still early. There's a long road ahead, a lot of systems to build, a lot of mistakes to make, and a lot of work still waiting for me. But for the first time in a very long time, I know exactly what game I want to create. And more importantly, I know why I want to create it. Thank you for sticking around. I will see you next week.